Good morning, MC Commute viewers, and welcome to another episode where we learn about motorcycles as we ride them to the motorcyclist offices here in Irvine, California. And today that motorcycle is going to be the 2021 Royal Enfield Meteor 350 that you see here behind me. Now, this is an all-new model for Enfield, a small displacement cruiser, if you will, that packs a lot of charm in a very small package. So we got a lot to talk about. Why don't we hit the road? Alrighty, the Royal Enfield Meteor 350. What a good looking machine this is. If I may say so myself, I think that Royal Enfield knocks styling out of the park with just about every model it makes. The INT 650 that we reviewed a few months ago, the Himalayan that we also reviewed, both of those motorcycles are just stunning machines, and I think that the Meteor 350 is no less. This is the Supernova up-spec trim, if you will. Now, that means that this motorcycle is going to have a windscreen up front, a passenger backrest at the back, and it also has this stainless exhaust where the more base model machines are actually blacked out. So that's a nice little touch with this up-spec machine. Now, it also has the all-new 349cc air oil-cooled power plant that we will talk about once we get on the road. A big 19-inch front wheel, 17-inch rear. And one thing that I'd really like to point out about this motorcycle is here on the dashboard. Now, let's just turn on the ignition. You have your analog dash over here on the left, but as you just saw, we have a colorful LCD display over here on the right. Now this connects with Royal Enfield's tripper function, which is actually a turn-by-turn direction source that's actually powered by Google. Now this is a first time for a Royal Enfield, and it actually is kind of ironic considering that the Himalayan that we reviewed a few months ago actually used a traditional compass. So I'll tell you guys about that tripper function as we get out on the road. 349 cc's of Fury. Not a bad exhaust note, actually, if you ask me. I think that's it has a little bit of grunt to it. I like it. Alrighty guys, before firing off on our MC Commute, I am going to turn on this tripper function. As you can see that we are now paired here, and we are going to put in the directions to the motorcyclist offices here in Irvine, California. And we're good to go. Now we have turn-by-turn directions here on this display here on the right. The only thing I have to say about this is I haven't been able to turn it to miles. It's all metric, kilometers and kilometers per hour, or sorry, kilometers and meters. My mistake. Other than that little nuisance, this tripper function on this Meteor 350 has actually been quite pleasant to use. Very easy to pair with the motorcycle. The app is very functional in picking up destinations that you might want to ride to, and then using Google Maps to get you there. And that's kind of a cool touch, especially being a budget-conscious machine as this Royal Enfield is. Now, we already mentioned that this is the Supernova, the up-spec of the Meteor 350s, and that is going to be priced at $4,599, whereas the base model, without the windscreen, without the backrest, is $4,399. So, considering that it is a budget-conscious machine, I think that tripper function is quite nice. I think that it's a nice touch. 349 cc's of Fury. Nice. You know, this is a very modest power plant, as you can expect from the spec sheet. Up on the motorcyclist dyno, this motorcycle produced about 17.9 horsepower and something like 18.2 pound-feet of torque. modest figures, but obviously this is not a performance minded machine. This is a classic timeless cruiser that's really approachable for all riders, but especially the beginner or the less experienced, that this will help get you into riding without giving you some big, crazy, unmanageable horsepower. That being said, it is a very smooth running machine with help of that balance shaft with very, very minimal vibrations as you accelerate through this 5-speed gearbox. Now, I have to give kudos to Royal Enfield on that gearbox that we have spoken about. The transmission ratios are very well spaced, in my opinion. I find that it's very... I never find myself in between gears, almost ever. Like, it's very easy to use, just accelerate through. If there's one thing that I had to comment on, would be the clutch feel of this machine. It's difficult to understand when the clutch is slipping and when it's not, and we can show you that as we accelerate away from these lights. But in first gear, it's pretty easy to jump off of them. 17.9 horsepower, we're on the gas. 17.9 horsepower is obviously not the most powerful of the bunch, or even in this space. I recently also had a Honda Rebel 300, which many of you will want to compare this motorcycle to, and also up on the Motorcyclist Dyno, where it recorded 25 horsepower on the dot. So you're looking at about 7 to 8 more horsepower from the Rebel 300, and it's also 49 pounds less fully fueled. This motorcycle is 421 pounds fully fueled, while the Rebel is something like, what's 49? I don't know, 372. Man, my math is pretty good, guys. I'm doing it. Anyways, that being said, the Enfield leaves a little bit to be desired in terms of power, especially when you're commuting in a place like Southern California, where if you're not going 85 miles an hour, it just feels like you're going to get run over at every chance these motorists get. Now, that said, Enfield has done a good job at packing that charm into the engine as we described. The engine has been designed to leave a nice little rumble, as you can see here at this stop sign, to give you that sensation that you're still on a cruiser. It has a nice thump near idle, while still remaining really incredibly smooth at speed, as we'll get to when we get out on the freeway here. Ergonomics wise, this Royal Enfield is very comfortable, as many of the motorcycles from Enfield have been. A nice relaxed reach to the handlebar up here. The windscreen is a nice touch, although when we get out on the freeway, this motorcycle doesn't really go quite fast enough to need a whole lot of protection against wind blasts, but it's nice to have. The 29.7 inch measured seat height of this machine is relatively low, and for a 5'7" tester like myself, I can easily flat foot as I come up to stoplights or navigate through dense, heavy traffic, and I feel very in control. The foot peg position is it's in a neutral position. It's not too far forward, but it's not too far back and up that might cramp yourself. So I have to give kudos to Enfield, as they've always done a really good job at creating very comfortable ergonomics packages. Now, one thing that popped in my mind while I was talking about that we absolutely have to talk about is Royal Enfield's use of a heel toe shifter on this Meteor 350, and I'm going to show it to you guys when I pull up to this light right here. Alrighty guys, the Enfield Meteor 350 uses that heel toe shifter, as you can see there on the left side of this motorcycle. Now, it's an interesting use because when I first hopped on this machine, I I just got on a bike and I just expected to just only use a toe shifter. And so that caught me out a little bit at first. Now, I wear a 9.5, maybe 10 riding boot, and being able to utilize the toe shifter up front, especially for upshifts, can sometimes be challenging. So to be able to get your foot underneath it and click those upshifts, especially if you're trying to accelerate very quickly or get in or out of a situation very quickly, it can sometimes be a little frustrating. Now, I've also started to adopt using the heel shifter, as you see there, but it's not necessarily a normal thing for me to do, as I'm doing it right now. So it can be a little awkward at points. And as far as I know, all the Enfield Meteor 350s come with that heel toe shifter. So maybe look at it some sort of aftermarket piece. If you're totally opposed to that heel shifter or have a large boot, could be an option to facilitate that. Now, the Royal Enfield Meteor 350 is a very neutral, well-balanced ride out on the open road. It has a 41mm non-adjustable fork up front and twin shocks out back with preload adjustability. And as I've found on a few of the other Enfields that I've been testing, it's a very, I don't know, it's a well-balanced ride. I already used that word, but I like that word. It's a very well-balanced ride that, especially in the suspension department, is supple enough to soak up all the little imperfections in the asphalt, the small chatter bumps, and really offer a very comfortable ride, while also not necessarily lacking in support, especially when we get on the brakes, as we just did. There's not a whole lot of dive, in my opinion, and the suspension, especially in the rear, is not jarring. It doesn't feel like it bottoms out, but it's also not too stiff. So I think that that Enfield has done a great job at finding that balance, as they seem to always do in the chassis department. As we discussed on the Royal Enfield Himalayan, we also have to discuss on this Meteor 350, and that being the braking performance and braking power, or lack thereof, of this motorcycle. This Enfield uses a single bi-bree caliper up front, 2 pistons clamping to a 300mm disc, while out back they clamp to a 270mm disc. And honestly, it leaves a lot to be desired in terms of braking performance, as we can see coming up here. Recently, at our performance testing facility, this motorcycle recorded a 60-0 stopping performance in something like 158 feet. Now, that's honestly quite lackluster. And in comparison, for relative information, a similar size motorcycle will often record something in the mid 130s, even low 140s, which isn't still the greatest, but it's obviously much better than 158 feet. Now, besides the actual stopping distance of this Enfield comes the lack of feel through the brake lever that kind of just hinders your ability to understand how much power is actually being applied at the disc and how much you have left to work with. Now, this Enfield also comes with ABS standard, and I have to give kudos to Enfield, as I have in the past, with the seamlessness of the ABS intervention, not necessarily pulsing in your fingers and taking away from your ability to stop the motorcycle. So it's very seamless intervention, and I appreciate that. We're doing roughly 50 miles an hour. Now, I'm also in top gear. I'm in 5th gear on this Enfield Meteor 350, and honestly, this is what this motorcycle is designed for. Just cruising along, not really in a rush to be anywhere. This is what it's designed for. I think that if you're looking for something very pleasant, very approachable, and relatively, I don't want to say unnoticeable, but you don't want to draw too much attention to yourself, this is where the Meteor 350 excels. And you can wail on it without drawing that attention to yourself. Try going full pin on a heavyweight machine or super bike or something. You're going to be drawing all sorts of attention to yourself, and probably likely run into to trouble with the law. I think the saying is it's more fun to ride a slow bike fast than a fast bike slow, and that's totally the case with this Meteor 350. Pitch this Meteor 350 on its side and let it loose. All right, we're on our way. 421 pounds, but this motorcycle, here comes the bump, not so bad. 421 pounds, but this motorcycle actually has a pretty lightweight feeling, especially considering the stance that it has, the application that Enfield ooh, excuse me, that Enfield went after. It lends itself to quick handling, which I appreciate that. Our first true traffic jam together on this MC Commute. It looks like there's an accident up here, I think on the other side of the freeway, so I hope those individuals are doing okay. Please look out for motorcyclists and just look twice when it comes to it. I really hope that this is not a motorcyclist. Good news, ladies and gents, it does not appear to be a motorcyclist, and we're set loose on the way to the motorcyclist offices. I think I just outran a traffic brake. Nice. All right, top gear, we're doing about 65 miles an hour, and this is where this motorcycle is happy. In testing, I've recorded a rough estimate of top speed being between somewhere of 70 and 75 miles an hour, maybe a little bit faster if you get a tailwind down a hill, something like that. But realistically, it's not going to go any faster than that. Now, even if you are going that fast, it doesn't leave any power to work with if you need to get by traffic or get yourself out of a situation, which that can be troublesome and sometimes nerve-wracking, which is why I'm not a particular fan of this small displacement machine for California highway cruising. Now, as I mentioned, I think that it does a pretty decent job on the local boulevard or cruising to get groceries, but it still leaves some to be desired, considering that Royal Enfield used the 411cc power plant in the Himalayan, which made 21 horsepower on the motorcyclist dyno. I sometimes question why they didn't do that with this, with the Meteor 350, and just call it the Meteor 400. I know that they're going for the charm of keeping that thump at low RPM at idle, but in terms of practicality and safety in that sense, it sometimes puzzles me a little bit. If you are going to ride this motorcycle on the fast-paced highways, I would recommend sticking to the slow lane and really giving yourself a few extra minutes in the morning to make your commute, and that way you don't have to feel rushed and you don't have to get yourself into a situation you might not want to be in. But overall, the cruise to the motorcyclist office is relatively comfortable. We do not have a tachometer on this machine, so I cannot tell you the RPM at which we are cruising, but it is relatively vibration-free. The only sort of vibrations I do feel are in the foot pegs and the floorboards. I guess foot pegs I could rather call them, but it's not overwhelming in any sense. That windscreen up front offers a little bit of wind protection, as we mentioned. Even at 65 miles an hour, it does do a good job at that. Now, over here you can see this dashboard with the analog speedometer. There is no tachometer, which I always love tachometers. That's a little bit of a downside for me, but it displays all the other important information. Over here on this tripper display, you can see that it is having me get off the freeway here in 2.7 Ks. It was all tripping out. get it. It was tripping out when I took our normal MC Commute route to the offices, as it was trying to put me on the freeway. I can't quite figure out how to make a route on the app yet, but I will. I'll figure it out, and otherwise it has been quite easy to use. We are hitting all the lights today, but that is okay. No real rush as we're cruising to the offices this morning. A little bit of brake squeal. Man, it is, the braking performance of this machine, as it is with the Himalayan, is really quite underwhelming. I don't know. It's worrisome to me. Not only is it worrisome in the fact that I can't feel how much is going on, and that robs me of a little bit of confidence. Maybe a new brake pad will help with that, and it will also help with stopping performance. But I just think about situations where maybe I'm on the freeway and traffic comes to a sudden halt, and I really just, I don't feel like watching whatever cartoons the kids are watching in the back of the minivan that's in front of me. I don't feel like that would be very good for me. I feel like I want a little bit of braking performance just to keep myself safe. And along those same lines, a little bit of power in that sense will help. Man, this brake squeal is new. A little bit of power would help in just keeping us out of situations. Alright guys, no motorcyclist MC Commute wheelie zone today. I don't think that 17.9 horsepower and 421 pounds is quite gonna do it, so we're just cruising. So, the Royal Enfield Meteor 350. Now this is the all-new small displacement cruiser, as we have mentioned. We made a comparison to the Honda Rebel 300 earlier in the show, and I want to circle back to that. The Rebel 300 is obviously going to be the benchmark that everyone wants to compare this motorcycle to, as it rightfully should. It's an awesome budget-conscious machine that a lot of newer riders or less experienced riders and even just cruisers enjoy. Now, it has more performance, as we mentioned. It's lighter, it's more powerful, and that lends itself to a more fun, more entertaining ride. Now, that's not saying that this one isn't, but I do think that it would grow a little bit tiresome after some time. And one thing that we really do have to remember about the Enfield versus the Rebel is the styling. I think that Enfield has obviously gone after a very classic, timeless style with this Meteor 350, and I think that they've struck it on the head. I think that this machine is very, very beautiful. Now, that being said, the Enfield Meteor 350 in this Supernova trim is $4,599, as we have mentioned earlier in the episode. You can actually get a base model without the windscreen, without the backrest, for $4,399. But considering that the Rebel 300 is also $4,599, it's really hard to pass up going the Japanese route that's a little bit more refined, a little bit more power, offers a little bit more performance, unless you're truly going after that styling. If you're after that styling and you live in a place where you're not in a rush, where you don't feel like you're going to get run over, I think that this motorcycle is fantastic. It's very smooth, very pleasant to ride. I feel very relaxed getting off this motorcycle, and I'm ready to go have a cup of coffee, settle in on my desk, and jam out on the story for you guys. But $4,599 Rebel to Enfield, I don't know. I've always found the Enfields, the INT 650, the Himalayan, to be very well priced in their respective markets. But this Meteor 350, it just doesn't do that for me at its current price point, especially with the performance of the motorcycle. Now, that being said, if we go back to a quick roundup of this machine, the 349cc air-cooled single cylinder with 17.9 horsepower, it's a very pleasant ride. It packs charm, especially at that low idle, as we talked about, but it leaves a little bit to be desired up top. The braking performance, we had to comment on that as well, as we did with the Himalayan as well. That leaves a little bit to be desired, more so for, I think, a safety concern more than anything. Anyways, the Meteor 350 is a very budget-conscious, small displacement cruiser for someone looking to just have a pleasant ride on the back roads. Now, I did enjoy my time aboard the Meteor 350, and I do look forward to the next one, as I always enjoy riding these Royal Enfields. I think that they just look awesome and magnificent, every single one of them. So if you guys like this video, be sure to give us a like, comment. We want to hear from you, and go over to motorcyclistonline.com to read the full story, and we'll see you guys next time.